And we are live. Welcome, Mystery and Thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to present to you tonight debut author Jane Peck, here to tell us all about her book, The Verifiers, a most anticipated book by GMA, LGBTQIA Reads, Bustle, Medium, CrimeReads. This book is everywhere, and this book is great. I'm so excited to get into all the details. Jane, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about The Verifiers.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And first of all, happy Valentine's Day to you and to everyone who's tuning in. I am really excited to be here, and I really want to thank you, Sarah, for extending this opportunity.
Oh, of course. I'm so happy to have you.
So I guess The Verifiers, how would I describe it? I would say it's a murder mystery set in contemporary New York City that looks at online dating apps and technology and their implications for how we live and love in the 21st century. And so I guess kind of a short summary is that Claudia Lynn, who is a 25-year-old second generation Asian American who loves Jane Austen and murder mysteries and cycling around New York City, somehow lands herself a job at an online dating detective agency where she helps clients to verify whether or not the people they meet online are legit or may not really be telling the full truth about everything about themselves. So then a client goes missing, and Claudia, channeling her inner detective, decides that she's going to go investigate. And of course, because this is that type of book, this investigation kind of spirals out of control, and she ends up discovering secrets far, far greater than she could have ever imagined. And along the way, she also has to navigate her difficult family because her mother doesn't know that she's gay, so tries to set her up with a nice Chinese boy. Her siblings are envious of the fact that Claudia is seen to be the favorite, and none of them know that she quit her previous job to go work as an online dating detective. But if they did know, they definitely would not approve. And so this is a story of how Claudia deals with all that and how she emerges at the end of the day.
Yay! Well, Jane Peck, you just hooked us because that is a tasty sounding book, and I can't wait to get into every single detail. Darla Hatan, welcome to the conversation. She said, sounds like my kind of book. Darla, it is your kind of book. It's so great. So for everyone who's been here, if you've been here before, we're broadcasting to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. So if you've been here before, you know how it works. Ask Jane anything. Ask her about Claudia. Ask her about this mom, this guilt-tripping, slightly controlling, completely lovable mom. Ask her about her writing process. Ask her, what she learned over 10 years of working on this beautiful book. Anything you want, get right into the comments. I'll get them right over to her. Anissa is saying, hello, Sara and Jane. I'm super excited to hear more about this book. Yay. And Darla is saying, good afternoon. Clearly afternoon where you are. Darla, thank you so much for joining us. Anissa, thank you so much for joining us. So this book, congratulations. A most anticipated book of the year by Publishers Weekly, Harper's Bazaar, Good Morning America, BuzzFeed, Electric Lit, Literary Hub, Book Riot, Bustle, CrimeReads, Medium, Alma, Lambda Literary, LGBTQ Reads, PopSugar. It goes on and on. Jane, did you ever expect this for the 10 years that you've been working on this book?
Yeah, I mean, as we were speaking a bit earlier, to me, it's just kind of amazing that, anything I wrote actually made it out there and that people are like, oh, this sounds interesting. We'd like to read it. So I just feel like it's incredible. And, definitely when I started with this idea several years ago, it just felt like, something that I was working on, that I had ideas about. Of course, I had, that kind of fantasy of what might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I will say that like each step of the way, like finding an agent and then selling the book and then having the book move through the publishing process, which, as you know, Sara, can take quite a while.
Yes.
And especially with COVID and, everything just in the last couple of years, it is really amazing to see the book start to go out there and to see that people seem to like it.
Yay! Well, we're not just liking it; we are loving it. So this is so exciting. So from the one of the things I immediately noticed as I was reading is this book is freaking funny. I am laughing out loud, and I love that because I didn't realize I love to laugh and I love to make other people laugh, but I didn't realize how much I missed that and how I don't usually see that in the mystery thriller space until I was reading your book, and I'm literally sitting there by myself laughing out loud, just one thing after another. So one thing, one line is you say, so Claudia's meeting with the client. She's going to verify that this guy that was talking to the client and then ghosted her, she's going to find out who this guy is. And when she sits down to meet the client, she thinks to herself, it also appears that the photos that she uploaded were from several years ago when she was 10 pounds lighter and her skin hadn't yet had to negotiate with gravity. And I literally laughed out loud because I do that. I upload photos of myself that are 10 years old when I was 10 years earlier, 10 years younger, 10 years later, and my skin had not yet had to deal with gravity. So I was like, oh my God, I'm that woman.
Now we know, Sarah. Now we know.
Now you know, exactly. I just outed myself.
Yeah.
It is so funny. So let me ask you, what do you think is the key to writing humor on the page? How do you be funny on the page? Because it's actually hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I should say, I'm really glad you find it funny. So, at least we share a sense of humor. So that's good.
Yay!
So I guess I kind of always knew that, like, writing this kind of murder mystery, I did want to make it funny. And I think one way in this particular genre is to play a bit with the tropes of the murder mystery, because they're very well established. And I think readers who are familiar with mysteries kind of know what they are. There's like the suspect, there's the victim, there's the red herrings, there's the clues sprinkled along the way. And then there's like the big reveal where the detective gathers everyone into a room and explains to each of them exactly why they could have done it, but they did not. And then you go that way, until you get to the real culprit. And so I think one way that I try to have some humor in the book is that I have a fictional mystery series built within the book. It's the Inspector Yuan mysteries. Yes. Yeah. And I kind of use that as a device for Claudia to use it a bit as a sleuthing guide, where she always goes around and she thinks, what would Inspector Yuan do? And usually, something ridiculous, because the Inspector Yuan mysteries are intended to be over the top. But then, like, by playing with that, I'm able to just kind of poke a bit of fun at, like each of the tropes. But at the same time, also because I do love mysteries myself, like paying homage to, like how the mystery works. And then in that kind of like compare and contrast, I feel like is a way of getting in that humor.
Oh, I love that. Because another really funny line from the book is when you're talking about her thoughts, and she said of the client, she says she looks like someone who makes lists for everything and derives satisfaction from checking the items off one by one. And I was literally like, I do that. I mean, I'm not above writing something down after I've done it just to get the satisfaction of checking it off.
No, that's true. I do that too. Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Okay, I'm not the only one. But just these little, what I love, I think you do so brilliantly and so effectively, is that you take these little highly relatable actions that some of us do, and then you put them on the page and you're like, oh my God, that's so me. And I I loved that. Jean, you are you have earned incredible praise. Keely Weiss from Harper's Bazaar raving, this is a funny and touching modern detective story. You earned starred reviews from both Publishers Weekly and Kirkus. Publishers Weekly raving that your writing is thoughtful, well constructed, and nuanced. Let's talk about nuanced. What does that mean to you?
So that's a good question. I guess I would say that like something is nuanced if things are maybe not presented simply in terms of black and white, and there isn't a sense of this is right or this is wrong or this is what happened and this is not what happened. I think an aspect of my book actually goes into this idea of the information that tech companies collect about us. In my book, it takes a deeper look into online dating companies and the information that we give to those companies so that they can help us come up with more compatible matches. But this could, of course, be applied to all aspects of our modern life. Like we let Google know where we are at any one point so that they can give us better directions. You know, we let Amazon know exactly what we're buying and how quickly we want to get it. We let Netflix know what we like to watch and what we're watching next, and on and on.
We let Venmo know who of our friends
Exactly.
were paying and for what. I mean,
Yeah.
Big Brother, this is a nightmare in the 1960s. And here we are, just know more about me, know more about me.
Yeah, exactly. To like all kinds of different tech platforms for different purposes. And so this was one thing that I did want to explore in the novel, but I also didn't want it to be this clear cut, like tech companies are bad. And, you know, like we should all go back to like not having smartphones and computers, etc. Because I do also want to acknowledge that our contemporary society is built very much around these types of apps and services and sites. And we have all become kind of accustomed to them. And we have seen, like, for instance, in COVID, it was helpful to be able to get home delivery of groceries or supplies and, you know, things like that. And so I kind of wanted to explore these types of questions, but without necessarily saying that something was definitively bad or good, but more kind of raising the issues and letting the reader hopefully think about them and come away with their own conclusions. And so to that end, you know, I am very flattered that Publishers Weekly thought that my writing was nuanced.
Well, it is nuanced, and it's also very funny. Kirkus raving, it is a cool, cerebral, and very funny novel. Claudia is the seductive protagonist in a tale that delves into the dark heart of contemporary technology, not to mention the foibles of the human heart, with an inquisitive, curious narrator. This adventurous mystery is both scary and hilarious. Again, also awarding you a starred review, which you have earned. Congratulations. So let's talk about being cool. Do you feel cool, Jane? How do you write? How do you feel cool, and how do you write a cool character?
No, I don't feel cool at all. But yeah, I mean, so I again, you know, I'm really flattered that Kirkus thought that, you know, the book, like the way they described the book. I mean, when I read that review, I was like, wow, it was pretty awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I guess Claudia is kind of a mix of like the person that I was in my 20s and maybe partly also the person that like I like to think that I could have been. I mean, I definitely like kick things up a notch in terms of, you know, some of the bike rides that she does, for instance, or like I personally probably would not give up my job to go work for an online dating detective agency. But it was just kind of fun to have a character who I tried to write as someone who was funny and curious, who was self-aware and but also had her own blind spots, especially I think with respect to her family, for instance.
Yes.
And so it was just fun to like kind of have this character and then just kind of let her loose in New York and let her like roam around and just kind of cross certain lines that I think, I mean, I personally would not cross.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You mean in terms of personal safety or?
Yeah, in terms of personal safety, and I think, you know, obviously there are some scenes in the novel, not to spoil things for people, but where, you know, she does things that maybe technically might not be fully legal. So, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, Jean, another thing is when you said that, you know, that you're creating this character who, you know, has the courage to leave her job, her safe financial services job, and work at this detective agency. I thought the detective agency was a brilliant idea. Are there dating detective agencies? How did you think of that?
So It's funny because I think the very original kind of idea that I had for this novel in terms of, like, what if there was an online dating detective agency in New York and their thing was to verify online matches? I think it was actually because I had heard a BBC segment about marriage, the detectives in India who actually look into marriages. So at the time that like kind of a couple gets engaged, and then oftentimes the parents might get a detective to go verify if the person who their son or their daughter is going to marry is really who they say they are, and if their family is really who they say they are. And so this was just kind of a random BBC segment from years ago by now, but that was kind of the germ of the idea. I will say that I do think, kind of given the way things are headed in the online dating space, I actually think that if we're kind of projecting into the future, that um, online dating detective agencies might not actually be that much of a thing, because I actually think the tech companies are going to develop the technology to verify people themselves. And I mean, I did a bit of just research into like kind of how the online dating and sites have developed. And because people are increasingly linking their other social media accounts to their dating profiles, which then in turn gives the online dating platform a lot more information about these people, um, the direction that they seem to be moving in is that eventually, Tinder can just verify you by seeing if what you say on your dating profile matches up with what you're putting out on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And so that way, you kind of jump over the whole need for an agency, because it's all being done by the tech company itself.
But you know what's really interesting? So I am a true crime junkie. Is there anyone else
Mm.
here who's a true crime junkie? I'm also a true crime podcast junkie. So I just finished listening to this crazy British podcast called My Sweet Bobby, which is about one of the largest and most extensive catfishing schemes that has ever happened. And so basically, this woman was catfished for 10 years.
Oh wow.
And the way that the catfisher did it was by creating, I believe it was up to 40 additional fake people, so that all of those people could be pulling the catfished victim back into the scheme if she would ever doubt it. So if she would ever say, well, where's Bobby? Why didn't he come, to see me as he promised to, or meet me for this weekend in London? Then Bobby's grandmother could call
Oh
her on
wow.
the phone, or could DM her or text her and say, oh, Bobby's with me. And because she felt that she knew the grandmother, because they were Facebook friends too, but this grandmother was fake. So I mean, it is insane
Oh my gosh.
how,
That Yeah. That
how
sounds like an incredible podcast, actually, and like a major gaslighting operation.
right.
Yeah.
So if they're verifying, if the I like your prediction that the online dating agencies are can start to verify it, but they can only verify with the information that's provided. So if someone is
Exactly.
really devious and a
Yeah.
psychopath, they
Yeah.
could actually, I mean, still get away with it. A
Yeah.
la Sweet Bobby. Irma, welcome to the conversation. So nice to have you here. Welcome, Terry. Welcome, Patricia. Welcome, Melinda. Welcome, Gail. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know if you have any question for Jane. Just get them going in the comments. Meanwhile, I just want to share a few more while it always takes me a minute or two to type. So go ahead and type. Helen Phillips, author of The Need, says the Verifier is both witty and profound at once, a propulsive read and a meditation on our moment. Jane Peck delivers an intricate murder mystery, a portrait of fraught family dynamics, and an interrogation of algorithmic matchmaking. Yay. Claudia Lynn is a memorable and magnetic protagonist. So is this the first of your Claudia Lynn series, or are we going to see a lot more of Claudia? Give us the skinny.
I mean, I would love to write a sequel, and like probably at least two books. But yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot of ideas about different directions in which Veracity, which is the agency that she works for, and Claudia herself could go. And I would
Ooh.
love to continue exploring the stories of her family, and how their interactions develop. So yeah, I mean, like I'll just say that I would love to write more of these novels.
And we would love to see more. Anissa says, would like to know, what was your biggest hurdle to clear in your writing of this debut novel? Great question, Anissa.
Yeah,
Jane.
no, thanks so much for asking that. Yeah, I mean, I think as Sara said, it took me quite a while to write this novel. So I would actually say it's interesting because I feel like reading the novel now, Claudia seems so much like the center of the novel. And I do really think that it's her voice that makes the novel work. But she actually did not appear in the book until the very last iteration of it. So I was writing this novel for like 5 or 6 years probably, and there was no Claudia. So I think I would say that my biggest hurdle was figuring out who my protagonist was and what her voice was. And it just took me a while to kind of put together that character. And then once I had her, then the final draft of the novel that I wrote before I went out to agents kind of came together pretty quickly. And then I'll say probably hurdle number 2 was just actually figuring out like the mechanics of the murder mystery. Because I'm sure, everyone here, they love reading murder mysteries, and you know that it's just really hard to come up with a clever way to kill someone and then have your detective find that out in an even more clever way, but
Ooh.
without it being obvious or without cheating in that sense. So I mean, I'll say that I found it really hard to like do all the plotting that was required to end up with, how the person died and how the crime was discovered, and kind of figuring out who did it.
Anissa is saying, wow. Whoa. I think we're all sort of flabbergasted to hear that Claudia was not the protagonist in the initial drafts. So who was it? Was it Kamala and Bex, the people at the agency? Was it trustees, the victim? I mean, who was it?
So I'll say that probably it was like just another character who similarly kind of like started out at the detective agency,
Oh,
but
wow.
just with like a different background and a different personality. And I think that character was just a lot more passive and didn't have that kind of that sense of just like, anything goes, like I'm gonna go do this thing, like curiosity that Claudia has. And so I think like trying to write from her perspective, just didn't give the story the momentum that I think it needed. I also wrote it in the third person for like the longest time as well. So and then I
Oh,
switched to the first
wow.
person with Claudia, and then that also just made the voice, I think, flow a lot better.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting. Now, was that feedback? Anissa, thank you for the great question, which has sparked this fabulous conversation. So, was it feedback that you received from an editor, from a writing group, or you just reached that conclusion on your own, Jane?
So it was actually a conclusion that I reached on my own. And yeah, it's interesting because I had actually finished, what I thought was the version of the novel that was ready to go out to agents. And I had actually started submitting like just a couple of submissions. And then I remember it was like on Labor Day weekend. It just like came to me. I was like, this novel is not ready. Like, I need a new character. I need a new protagonist, and I know who that protagonist will be, and I know what their family will be like, and I know how those dynamics will work. And so I just kind of stopped the submission process right then, and then spent another 9 months rewriting the entire thing. I did keep like Kamla and Bex were there from the start, so they were always there, and they were always kind of their personalities and their characters were what they were. Iris Latrist and like that whole mystery, those characters were also always there, although the mystery was very different. Oh, and also there was no murder, so no one died. So and then I was like, oh,
Wait,
someone should
what?
die.
So, if there
Yeah.
was no murder, what was the mystery? Just finding the guy he had not like was just finding the guy who had ghosted Iris, but it didn't involve any murder.
So the mystery was more still around like that bigger questions of what the companies were doing, but there wasn't, yeah, there wasn't really this kind of clear cut like classic murder mystery arc where like a client comes in, client disappears, you want to find out what happens, and then you go through your list of suspects in that way. So yeah, I mean, I definitely moved a lot more towards that classic murder mystery plotline as I wrote.
Very, very cool. So you mentioned that you are a mystery fan yourself, Jane. So what kind of books and authors do you like to read?
So I will say that in terms of mysteries, I am very much like a British golden age mystery kind of person. So of course, Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes. I've also read the Georges Simenon, Inspector Maigret. I read a bit of Perry Mason, which was okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I feel like those are the kinds of mysteries that I like. And then otherwise, I mean, I also just very much enjoy literary fiction. I think one of my favorite recent books is like this espionage spy thriller, but
Ooh.
like a literary novel called Who is Vera Kelly, and it's basically about like a woman in 1960s Argentina working as a CIA spy during the Argentine Revolution, but she herself is closeted. And so there's this idea that she's in disguise on multiple levels. And the writing is beautiful. And, it was just, in a way, like reading a book like that, I was like, oh, yes, this takes the genre, but it also subverts it in certain ways by making the protagonist someone who would not be your standard spy protagonist. And so in that respect, I also hope that that's what I've done with the Verifiers, where Claudia is not your standard like hard-boiled detective.
Yes, let's talk about that because Claudia is not our standard hardboiled detective. So first of all, she is young. She is new to the detective trade. She's not a police officer. She's not, 20 years into her career and old and grizzled and sort of like, smoking a cigarette
Yeah.
and chugging her black coffee and hobbling to the, like, I don't know, getting in her old beater of a car and tooling around, whatever the tropes are. So she's young, she's female, she's Asian, and she's gay. So this blows a lot of things out of the water. And actually, when I was doing the social media promos about this, I like to have little emojis, little stickers. And when I
Yeah.
typed in detective, I actually was quite distressed to realize that none of the gifts that came up were Asian. They were most of them were men.
Yeah.
And then I tried spy and I tried spying and then I tried magnifying glass. And there were a few female, but they were mostly white older men, which was so interesting. I was like, wow, there's a space here in the market that is needing this voice. Let's talk about all those 4 things that make Claudia different. Did you just want to bring this to the page or tell us about the creation of that?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll say that I probably like I always knew that the protagonist would be a gay female. And I think that's because I felt like growing up, when I was reading books, there weren't hardly any books that I read that had gay female protagonists. And I really wanted just that perspective to be in books. And I didn't necessarily want it to be a book which is about her coming to terms with her sexuality or anything. Like
Yes.
the thing is that she's gay and she's cool with it. She's not going to tell her mother, but she's cool with it. And so that's like you just see the novel through her perspective as someone who is like that without it being made a big deal of. And similarly, I want her to be Asian American because I myself obviously am Chinese and from Singapore. And again, I just wanted there to be this character who was Asian, but again, did not necessarily make a big deal out of it, except that, I like to kind of subvert that trope of, as she says, the petite, soft spoken Asian female and all the assumptions that are made about her, which she then subverts in terms of how she conducts her detective activities. Because as she says a couple of times, no one ever suspects that she would do anything even remotely sketchy. And so she's able to just talk to people, to, maybe climb in and out of people's houses, and no one would ever think that that she's like committing a crime. And I wanted to just make fun a bit of that trope of the petite, soft-spoken Asian female.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I did want someone who was in her 20s because I felt like there is kind of that time in your life when you're still trying to figure out where you are. Like you're living in deep Brooklyn with roommates, and you're like, do I want to do X or Y? And maybe you're not fully happy with your job. And so I like the idea that she's just kind of like meandering along through her 20s, and then this like amazing adventure just like appears in front of her. And so, of course, because of the type of person she is, she's totally going to grab that because she wants to have adventures, and she gets to have them like through being a verifier, through working at Veracity. And then, of course, as the plot moves along and you realize that things are bigger than she originally thought they were, then it just becomes an even bigger adventure than she could ever have dreamt of.
I love that. And I just was having this conversation. I've had this conversation a couple times recently with some of my Black authors where, they said the same thing. They wrote books with lead Black characters because they didn't see that on the page when they were growing up. They wanted to see that on the page, and they wanted to see. Nikki May, who wrote Wahala, said, I didn't want to write a Black character that was struggling, that was fraught with trauma, that was suffering. She's like, I wanted to write a Black character living her best life, being fabulous, dressing well, succeeding, thriving, living her best life. And also where her Blackness was not centered in trauma as part of the story. And it's the same thing. We don't always need to see, of course there is space for those stories, and we need those stories too, but there are already those stories. And the same thing with LGBTQIA characters. It doesn't have to be the entirety of the story. They don't have to be struggling with it, because the more that we normalize not struggling with it, the more that will actually come to pass, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I mean, and like you said, like I fully appreciate those novels, and like I do love reading them as well. But I think I knew that, for in terms of my own writing, that was not really like what I wanted to explore. And I just wanted to have this character who had all of these traits. And so I think similarly in terms of a family, because it's an immigrant family and they grew up poor, and there was like conflict within the family. And so all that is in the book, but it's again not, it's not like this is a book about how this immigrant family struggled to make it in America or anything like that. It's just that's the way that these people are, and that's how they lived. And let's go on with her trying to figure out who killed the victim.
Exactly. Yeah. And you did that so artfully. Like you referenced that the mother, had come through JFK, and with all of her hopes and all of her dreams and all of her misconstrued perceptions, I think you said, of what America was going to be. And had she known what was coming, she would have run, but with her future life with her husband and everything else. But you make it as a passing reference in terms of why her mother is who she is today, and that she's a woman who wishes that she had done more things, had made more things happen instead of allowing things to happen to her. And it was that sentence that allowed me to key into exactly why Claudia's mom is who she is, and how she got to where she is and why she feels that way. I was like, oh, I get it now. So again, just those brilliant, concise, you're not going into a deep, 4-chapter dredging of it, but it's just a perfectly crafted sentence that allows me to get it. And you do that over and over and over again. I really love that about this book. Hi, Joe Ben. Welcome to the conversation. Hi, Glenn. Welcome to the conversation. Great to have you both here. So we have just 5 minutes left with Jane. So any questions that you have for her about her writing process, about Claudia Lynn, about anything you'd like to know, get it going in the comments. I just want to share a few more reviews. E.B. Boatner says, wry humor plus Veracity's creepy all-seeing eye rivets. Well-crafted, stylishly written. Peck sets a high bar for a solid series featuring Claudia and her family. So EB is definitely looking for more Claudia Lynn books to come, as we all are. Jane. So is there anything that you would, are hoping that I would ask, or that you would just like to share with us? I always want to leave the conversation open so that you can share with us what do you want people to take from this, or anything I haven't asked?
Yeah, no, I mean, Sarah, I think you have asked like a whole bunch of great questions, and it's been really fun to talk about the book. I mean, I guess what I'd like people to take away from this, I mean, I hope that they enjoy it, first of all. I hope that maybe it makes them think a bit about how we use our technology and kind of the trade-offs that we make between convenience and privacy. I'll say that I think, for me, above all, when I myself read, I always like get invested in the characters above all. And once I'm into a character, I'll just kind of follow them anywhere. And so I hope that for some people reading it, they will feel the same way about the characters that I've created. So yeah, and as we talked earlier, I mean, I would love to write more of these novels if the opportunity arose. I do feel like these characters are characters whose lives I would want to continue experiencing, and I would want to continue kind of seeing how their adventures play out. And so, if there was a chance, then yeah, I would love to.
So Jane, let me ask you this. So it took you 10 years to write this book, and you can feel that in it. You can feel that it's had time to marinate, time to ripen, time to be honed and lovingly polished by you. So if when I'll say you have the opportunity to write another one, do you feel now, having honed your craft for 10 years and now keying into Claudia's voice, would you be able to write it? Would you feel confident writing much faster, or do you think books need the time to come to be?
So that's a good question. I do think that if I were to write kind of a sequel to this and subsequent books, that I do think that they would go much faster. I think a lot of it was kind of me kind of figuring out how to write a novel in the first place, and just kind of, not being the most efficient about it in terms of I did a lot of writing that never went anywhere. And, there were a lot of drafts that like millions of words probably that, will never see the light of day. So, so I do think that kind of with the second book, I have the characters in place, and I feel like I understand them a lot more now. Yes. And hopefully I've gotten a bit better with the plotting aspects of it, such that it won't like take me so long to figure out what exactly happened in the novel. So I'm cautiously optimistic that it will not take another 10 years to write book 2.
Yeah, and I totally agree, because it's everything you just said. You've gotten more familiar with her. And more familiar with the craft. Now what you have a better sense of it, and that takes time as well. I mean, that really can't be rushed. I mean, to be fair, you're also a lawyer. You've been busy. You're busy working in your esteemed law career as well. So it isn't like you quote unquote just have been sitting and writing millions of words. You have also a lot else going on in your life. So I mean, I'm amazed that you were able to write a book at all in 10 years or not, while working as a lawyer. So I just want to say to everybody again, I think this book is so great. There's just something really special about it, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. And I also just love being made to laugh out loud. That for me is the best. So I want to remind everybody, this book isn't even out yet. It's coming out next Tuesday. So this is our exclusive sneak peek with Jane Peck. So I'm going to put the link in the comments. So grab your copy tonight. And then the good folks at Murder by the Book will put it in the mail for you next Tuesday when this book drops, when it hits newsstands, or bookstores rather. So grab it now, and then let us know what you think about it, how you enjoy being in Claudia's perspective and in Claudia's experience. Jane, thank you so much for coming on and for giving us the inside scoop about Claudia Lynn and all of her adventures and a sneak peek into your writing process. It's been such a joy to host you, and I can't wait to host you again when the next Claudia Lynn book comes out.
Thank you for your confidence. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, no, thanks. This has been really fun, and you know, thank you for taking the time to read it, and for thinking of me for this series.
Of course.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh my gosh, Darla saying thank you so much. Thank both of you for the informative interview. Darla, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for popping in. It's been lovely to have you here with us as well. All right, y'all. I'll see you at the top of the hour with debut author Allison Bucola. Catch her when she falls. Have a great night, everybody.